FanDuel and DraftKings were starting their marketing. These product experiences are not built for normal people. Why does this look like a spreadsheet? Nobody who's watching a soccer match is on the edge of their seat wondering to themselves, is there going to be a yellow card before a corner kick? Like,
it's true.
Who fucking cares? We don't want to just enable people to bet on like Aaron Judge's at bat while he's on deck or in the hole. We want to enable people to bet on his at bat while he's at the plate. I started talking to Jake a bunch, how I thought that we had to go after direct to consumer. We ultimately decided to do better together. If you don't control that end consumer experience, you're really inherently limiting the opportunity for what this product could ultimately become.
Miami doesn't seem like a place, or isn't generally known as a place for like tech companies, I guess you would say.
Not right now. Not yet.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm from down here. I don't know. We could talk about this on
Yeah,
the show, but no, I'm from down here, man. And when I grew up down here, I did not think that technology entrepreneurship was a thing you could do in Miami.
Yeah,
For sure.
And COVID really accelerated that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I don't know if we're rolling now. I could keep
Yeah, no,
rolling.
just
we're
run,
rolling.
just run.
We're
Yeah,
rolling.
run.
We're
Yeah,
rolling,
just
bro.
run.
We just go in.
Yeah, sure. So I quick background on me, I guess. I was born and raised down here, not in Miami proper, in Broward County. So I was born in Hollywood, Florida. Have a lot of my family there. My cousin is actually currently the mayor of Hollywood, Florida.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Cooper City first 14 years, then Plantation, went to high school in Pembroke Pines. So super familiar with South Florida. And as I said, I never thought that you could be a technology entrepreneur in Miami or South Florida.
Yeah.
I moved to New York to go to college. I went to Columbia University for a couple of years, and I had an idea for a daily fantasy sports business called DraftPot. And this was around the time that, and for some additional context, I grew up loving fantasy baseball. It was like my favorite thing to do. I wanted to like be a general manager of an MLB team, informed by
Nice.
that experience. And do you guys play fantasy sports?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with like, so this was like a very specialized like 5x5 NL only
Okay.
rotisserie auction draft.
Nice.
I don't like another South Florida guy, Stu Gotts from the Dan Levitard show, for example, was
Yeah.
in my league. And
Okay.
Oh, come on.
I was like 12 years old, like nonstop sending him trade offers and emails. And
So you loved it.
yeah, and I think he told me to like, he sent me one reply one time, like shut the fuck up, like leave me alone type thing. Wasn't that bad. We're friends now, but was super into fantasy baseball. Went to college, and I started at school around I started at 2013. And it was right around the time that FanDuel and DraftKings were starting to really ramp up their advertising, and I started using daily fantasy sports, and I thought it was like the best idea ever. You basically took my passion and introduced an order of magnitude greater level of instant gratification to the consumer experience. Yeah. But as I was using it, I thought to myself that if you're not like this fantasy sports obsessed user, you're not going to have any idea how to use this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to the lobby and you see the like rows and rows of these GPPs, guaranteed prize pools, and then when you get into there, you have to pick these players. You got to pick like 9 or 10 players, and against this salary cap format. And if you're not like this quantitatively savvy user, or even an algorithmically like people were creating algorithms to automatically populate their lineups, for example. That's how bad it got.
Yep. Yeah.
And that actually got made fun of by like the John Oliver show, because they marketed that anybody could win and it was built for the casual fan. But I think there was a stat like less than 1% of the users were winning over 90% of the money. So there were a lot of problems with that industry, both from a user experience standpoint. It wasn't simple and intuitive for somebody who'd never done it before. Yeah. But then also from a just fairness standpoint, like regular people had no chance of winning.
I think during that time too, it was like tech was becoming more popular, and using your phone to do these things on the apps was more popular, and people weren't necessarily tech savvy at that point either. And I remember using fantasy basketball, and I stopped because it was just so hard to. The user experience was awful. awful.
Around what time? Like what year?
I would say 2016, 17. I was doing fantasy basketball, and I was like, "Why is this so hard to do?"
Yeah.
Right? And I was thinking the same thing. I'm just like,
It's still,
I know
it's
basketball.
It's still kind of hard to do.
It still is hard, but
Yeah.
I remember during that time it was fucking awful, to be honest. But how did you get into the tech side of it? You liked the sports at that point.
Yeah, no tech background. So
Yeah.
I was at Columbia as a history major focused on 19th century American
shit,
history.
wow.
So you could ask me
Night and
about
day.
like the Jefferson years and
Yeah.
Jacksonian democracy and then Civil War and Reconstruction. I remember some of it. But studying history was in retrospect, I think, a great decision, because part of being a successful entrepreneur is being able to not just create these unique insights that inform your vision, but to evangelize and articulate your vision to the marketplace. And with history, you're just reading a lot.
Yep.
And you're writing a lot.
Yep.
And I get some of my best work done when I'm just like writing long emails, because writing forces me to think.
Yeah.
And I think not enough people really just emphasize that. They kind of just go, go, go. But as a founder CEO, you're getting paid to make really important decisions.
Yeah.
You need clarity of thought.
Absolutely.
So history was actually a really good way of focusing on that. And Columbia has a great liberal arts department.
Yep.
And I remember there was one professor who just really dove in with us and was really I just became a much better writer after having his class, and I still use a lot of that today, but no sort of sports technology background.
Okay.
I've never written a line of code in my life. I
Wow.
have no engineering skill set.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I
what
had this-
led you into it?
So so as I mentioned, I was in college.
Yeah.
FanDuel and DraftKings were starting their marketing, and I was using the products. And again, I thought to myself that these product experiences are not built for normal people.
Yeah.
Like, they're advertising like car insurance companies. They're spending all this marketing money, but a normal person can't pick up this product and intuitively interact with it.
Yep.
And so with DraftPot, we launched what was the first no salary cap game format,
Okay.
because I thought if you eliminated the salary cap, then at least you made it easier for people to like
Draft
fill
whoever-
out their lineups,
Figure it out, yeah.
Draft whoever they wanted.
and pick the superstar players. Now a lot of people criticized me when we launched this, because they said it was a bad idea because what's stopping everybody from picking the same players? But because you have 10 players to pick in your lineup, all it takes is one or two players in the lineup to be different for the entire score of that lineup to be different. So the idea actually worked,
Okay.
and we were growing, and we were seeing signs of product market fit. And then I don't know if you remember, but and some of the timeline on this is I really started going after the project in earnest in my sophomore year. So this is like 2014, 2015, and then I ended up dropping out of school actually after this to pursue it full time. I raised a couple $1 million of venture financing, and we were growing, and it was going well, and then in mid-October of 2015, that was the sort of the infamous insider trading sort of scandal, where there was a DraftKings employee who used proprietary ownership data with respect to a particular lineup. He did that, and he turned like a $5 entry into like $200,000 on FanDuel.
Come on.
He used the information from DraftKings to win on FanDuel.
Okay.
And
And this is someone in the company.
this was somebody that was working at DraftKings
Yeah.
and used this information to win on FanDuel.
Damn. Let's rewind a bit. You dropped out of school.
Yeah.
How was that decision? Because we talked to a lot of people. They ended up dropping out of school. So what went into that decision for you? And yeah, how was that?
I mean, so I think I'm actually technically on like my 8th or 9th gap year.
Oh, so you never officially
I never
dropped?
sent them a letter saying I'm out.
Oh, okay.
So you can just
Nice.
show up right now if you want.
I don't think so. So I think the way it works is I told them I wanted to take some time off.
Okay.
They gave me 2 gap years. Then I remember going back to them, and I went to my dean, Justin Snyder. I went to his office, and I said, I want a little bit more time. And this is around the time that I went from focusing on DraftPot to what ultimately became SimpleBet. and I think I need a little bit more time to like go down this path. And I remember telling him, I think it was like Andre Agassi, the tennis player, was one of our first investors into SimpleBet, and I remember telling him like to try to prescribe some credibility. Like, even Andre Agassi invested in this thing. Like, he's like, oh, I love tennis. It's great. Yeah, sure. I'll just give you more gap years. So that's kind of how it went.
Okay.
And I don't mean to put Justin on the spot, so maybe you can cut that part out. But no, they were super flexible with me, and like because I communicated with them, and then I went down this SimpleBet path, and we ended up building a real business. I mean, SimpleBet today is one of the, if not the leading B2B technology companies in in-play betting in the U.S. online sports betting marketplace. And, $80 million of venture financing, 8 figures of revenue, starting to generate some real cash this year, worth a fair amount of money. And then that experience culminated into BETR.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more details that I could go about with all these
with
these 3 different businesses, but it for me it was kind of just this like just a path that I was going on, and as I went down the path, it became increasingly more and more obvious to me that I would at least not be going back to school anytime soon. Okay. And then along the way, with respect to after the during the draft pod experience and into what ended up becoming SimpleBet, the people at the Teal Fellowship reached out to me, noticing my work and inviting me to San Francisco to meet more of the team and meet more of the other fellows. And then a week later, I get a call from Jack Abraham, who was I think the executive director of the fellowship at the time, offering me the fellowship. And my first question was like, what's the catch? Like, how much equity do I owe you guys? And he was like, no, there's no equity requirement. We're just going to give you $100,000. The way we're going to do it is, there's going to be $12,500 deposited into your account every quarter for a 2-year period. And all we ask you to do is just every month or so, update us on the business, get on a call. We're going to invite you to some events to hang out with the other fellows. Come to those events if you can. And that was it. So I did the Teal Fellowship, and it was a no-brainer decision because I had already left school.
Sure.
I didn't need the fellowship to like tell me not to go back to school. I was already not going to go back to school at least anytime soon. So I knew I needed at least a couple more years to see the fellowship through, and I was working on my businesses anyway. So, but without the fellowship, none of this would exist because I ended up using the fellowship money to start. A lot of people don't know this, but the initial iteration of SimpleBet I started in Eastern Europe because sports betting was not legal in the United States yet. I used that money from the fellowship to ultimately start that project, which ultimately became SimpleBet.
Wow.
So
Okay.
So from the first brand you had, DraftPot,
Yes.
right? Then you get into SimpleBet. Is that simply a rebrand, or what's your mission behind the new company?
Yeah, so to close the loop on the initial situation of the DraftKings employee winning money on FanDuel and all that, what that resulted in was FBI investigations into all these companies. Wow. Eric Schneiderman, who's the Attorney General of New York at the time, sent us and a bunch of others cease and desist letters saying that daily fantasy sports was an illegal gambling operation. Okay. And as is the case in with many of these types of things, the way New York goes informs some of the other states too. So we ended up all getting cease and desist letters from about like 20 to 25 attorneys general across the U.S. And what that created was a lot of regulatory uncertainty with respect to the viability of the daily fantasy sports category. Okay. And FanDuel and DraftKings were able to survive all of that because they had collectively raised, I think at the time, close to $1 billion of venture financing. So they had the money to pay the legal fees and the lawyers and all of that. And there were a couple of other companies that were scrappy and nimble and able to survive. Unfortunately, at DraftPod, we made a lot of mistakes, right? Like one of the mistakes we made, and we didn't raise like a ton of money. I think we raised like $2 or $3 million total. But, we were, because the industry was growing so quickly, we made the decision to go a bit aggressive during the NFL 2015 season to just accelerate customer acquisition and I think the strategy actually could have worked well because we were in advanced discussions for Series A investment and things like that to continue the growth. It was very much a growth trajectory for not just DraftPop, but for the industry in general. But, mid-October, everything changed due to the regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah.
So the company ended up getting, scooped up by another smaller company in the space, and it wasn't the outcome that we all thought we were going to have and wanted to have, and that's what happened. But it was an amazing learning experience for me. I learned a lot about myself and what I was passionate about, and it was around the time that all was happening that I was introduced to traditional sports betting for the first time. Okay. And because I was a fantasy sports guy as a kid, I never really actually interacted with this thing called a money line. Yeah. and it wasn't yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't legal in the US yet. So there was a bookie, and he sent me a link to this site, and I remember looking at it, and this is like a sports book, it was a mobile sports book. And I'm like, what the fuck is a -175 money line? What's a +5.5 point spread? Why does this look like a spreadsheet? This shit should be a lot more engaging and entertaining than this, whatever the fuck I'm looking at.
The math you're
What
looking
is
at.
this? Yeah.
It's like it looked like a foreign language.
Yeah.
And this was around now, and just to close the loop on that, I ultimately, after 10 or 15 minutes of Googling, I did end up figuring out that -175 means you bet 175 to win 100, and I learned how to do it. But if there was anybody who should have been able to intuitively pick up that experience and interact with it, it was me.
Should have been you, yeah.
I was a daily fantasy sports operator, and I didn't know how the fuck to use a sports betting product.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I'm like, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong, and it's also around the time, this is like 2016, 2017, where Robinhood was becoming more popular as a day trading app, and I couldn't help think to myself, and I still use this analogy today with respect to BETR, that all these sports books back at the time, 2016, 2017, and still to this day, FanDuel and DraftKings, they kind of feel like the E-Trade, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Vanguard of that, with respect to, Robinhood ended up creating the first simple, intuitive, engaging consumer experience around buying and selling stocks.
Yep.
And I felt like from that moment, I felt like somebody needed to build effectively the Robinhood of gambling.
Yeah, of betting, yep.
And, I still feel very strongly about that. And that's basically what BETR is looking to accomplish from a product standpoint. But that insight is what put me down a path to ultimately start what became SimpleBet. And I actually called the company SimpleBet because I thought the key value proposition was in launching a direct-to-consumer company that simplified the sports betting user experience, got rid of the money lines, the point spreads, the over-under, and just made it an intuitive UI UX. That's why I started SimpleBet.
So, and SimpleBet was something that other sportsbook would use to simplify the platform?
So when we started, we were unsure how to go to market.
Okay.
We started it to be direct to consumer, actually. We wanted to launch an app called SimpleBet.
Okay.
And what ended up happening actually was, so I was working on this as a project in 2017, again, out in Eastern Europe. It wasn't legal in the US. I quickly realized that regardless of when the US market were to open up, that I needed to build the company in US. I needed to get back to New York because this needs to be a venture-backed business. I need to be in the US. I need to raise from US investors and do it that way. Mm-hmm. So came back to the US. Myself, Scott Marshall, and Chris Bevilacqua, my two co-founders at SimpleBet, and Scott invested with me in DraftPod, and he invested in the project that ultimately became SimpleBet, and he ended up investing in my venture fund, 305 Ventures, after that, and then BETR. So he's invested in everything I've done since we met when I was 19, and he's been like a mentor of mine. And then he introduced me to this guy, Chris Bevilacqua, who was one of the top sports business executives in the country, and we came together to start SimpleBet, and we signed the incorporation documents on April 3rd of 2018. The Supreme Court repealed the federal ban on sports betting in May of 2018. So,
wow.
as Chris likes to say, it sometimes better to be lucky than smart. So we were in the U.S. We started this sports betting thing. We were already raising a little bit of money, and the Supreme Court repealed the federal ban. And what that did, because a lot of people who aren't like, I'm living and breathing this industry, so but a lot of people don't realize that it didn't just like automatically turn on sports betting in all 50 states. Basically, what the Supreme Court said was that the federal government does not have the right to tell states that they cannot codify a regulatory framework and pass legislation around sports betting, that it's a states' rights issue. If New Jersey, which was the impetus for all of this, wanted to pass sports betting legislation to enable their Atlantic City casinos to take advantage of it, then New Jersey should have the right to do that.
Sure.
So that's what ended up happening. So it was going to start what was we didn't know how fast the legislative momentum was going to be, but it started a process around legalizing sports betting nationwide. And when this happened, we decided to focus exclusively on U.S. sports, and specifically some of the ideas we had were around enabling people to bet on things like pitches and at-bats of baseball games, plays and drives of football games, for no particular reason other than we were all U.S. sports fans, and we thought that that would be something exciting for people to bet on. People would want to bet that the next, whether or not the next pitch of a baseball game would be a ball strike or in play.
It's very forward thinking though, at that time, because I don't think a lot of other sports books or anything were even doing that at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it didn't really exist, and the key insight that we made, and what made the business so compelling, was that the reason why no other sportsbook was doing this was because if you think of what drove the global regulated sports betting industry before the U.S. market, it was soccer.
Yep.
Of course.
Think of how a soccer match works.
Yep. We're big soccer bettors.
Yeah, so it's a very fluid game.
Yeah.
There aren't any discrete occurrences or moments to bet on. There's not a lot of scoring. But if you think of how U.S. sports work, there's a lot of scoring, it's moment to moment, stop and start cadence, a lot of speculation over superstar players and what they'll do next. True. So it became apparent that micro betting, it made a lot of sense why it didn't properly, that nobody had really built the requisite technology, the requisite technical infrastructure to enable micro betting to exist, but that for U.S. sports, this ultimately made a lot of sense. So that's why we ended up focusing on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just betting on moments, pretty much.
Correct.
Is what you're saying, and you're pretty much saying that no one really thought about it because the worldwide sport would be soccer, and the U.S. is basically mostly baseball, basketball, football, and no one in the U.S. had thought of that yet.
What's going on? It's Snoop, and I'm here to announce that the new Happy Dad and Death Row Records flavor is great, and now it's officially in stores. I chose the flavor, and the team at Happy Dad, they spent months perfecting it, and it's my new favorite drink. If you're chilling at home or turning up at the club, make sure you do it right with the Happy Dad and Death Row Grape. Call your local liquor stores and see who has it. It's everywhere now. You can also order it on GoPuff app, Instacart, and Drizzly in some areas. You gotta be 21 and over and drink responsibly.
It's not that nobody thought about it. So Bet365, who's now a client of SimpleBet, actually did have micro markets for a long time for soccer. It was a next occurrence market. So basically you're betting on, will the next thing to happen in this soccer match be a corner kick, yellow card, red card, or goal? And it did, probably less than 1% of their total betting handle. So I remember when I was, going to investors and going to industry people and talking about how we were going to focus on micro betting and building the technology to enable it, SimpleBet, I remember a lot of the industry experts saying to us that, well, why are you're going to burn a bunch of investor money going after this, because micro markets have existed for a long time, and it's less than 1% of the handle. But what they didn't realize, and one of the big problems in this industry, is you effectively have a bunch of commoditized European sports books that are the product standard in the U.S. market, because what they didn't realize is that nobody who's watching a soccer match is on the edge of their seat wondering to themselves, is there gonna be a yellow card before a corner kick? Like,
it's true.
Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
It's a contrived user experience to bring more instant gratification to betting. The reason why they did it was because people like instant gratification. And so, the fact that it even got 1% is remarkable, right?
I'm sure 1% of the market was huge at that time anyways.
Well, especially just for soccer, the fact that it ran off of soccer, which, like you said, like, who the fuck's sitting at the edge of the seat being like, oh, is it going to be a yellow yet? Like, makes sense.
But if you think of U.S. sports,
Well,
when you're watching a baseball game, what are you wondering to yourself?
The next 10 seconds.
The next
literally.
pitch, everything. It's everything. Hit. There's so many options.
Micro betting is in line with how people are already consuming sports in this country.
Yeah.
So
Even content, like if you want to go that far.
that's a great point too.
Yeah.
And we could talk about that from a better standpoint. I mean,
Yeah, which we will. We'll
Yeah.
get into that. But so essentially, you guys, I want to just kind of go through the timeline. So SimpleBet, initially it was a direct-to-consumer idea platform. Then you realize, hey, there's this micro betting aspect to it. Let's create something now B2B that we can sort of integrate our technology into, platforms like Bet365 and whatnot, but more for the American sports rather than soccer, let's say.
And you're saying you got some pushback initially.
Yeah,
from the
people
around you.
thought we were out of our minds for the amount of money we were raising to build the product and technology to enable micro betting. They were saying you're going to build some really impressive technology to enable a category of betting to exist that doesn't really matter. And so on the timeline, that timeline's generally correct. What I will say is that we started building the machine learning and automation infrastructure to enable micro betting to exist as a category, not fully committed at that time yet to being a B2B company.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be direct to consumer
Okay.
because you could build the back end technical infrastructure to enable a new product experience to exist. And we had no choice. We had to do it. Again, we only decided to do that after we went to the other B2B suppliers and were looking for API feeds to enable us to offer micro betting so that we could go direct to consumer with our simple and intuitive UI UX.
Okay.
When we went to Sport Radar and Bet Genius and Stats and Perform, who were two separate businesses at the time, that's when we discovered nobody had built the requisite technical infrastructure to enable micro betting to exist. And that's when we realized that the reason for that was because everybody had historically been building product and technology exclusively for, predominantly for soccer and to some extent for tennis and a few other sports. So we had to build the technology ourselves. And we quickly realized along the way that was a wholly separate business.
Yeah.
Like, again, I've never written a line of code, right? And I had to figure out, and it was very bumpy.
Yeah.
How are you managing that?
Yeah.
Like not understanding
A lot of failure along the way.
Yeah. And I'm interested to hear some of the failures that you did have and what you learned from them along the way before we get into better.
And even managing a team of people doing that when you couldn't technically overlook them. I don't want to say
No, it was
properly,
a big problem.
but
Yeah.
It was a big problem. I mean, we basically we fucked up all over the place. I mean, we basically first thought that it was all about the data science.
Okay.
Because we wanted to be super accurate with our pricing and build out these predictive models, but we underestimated the need for the people creating the algorithms to be super intuitively into the sports that they were creating algorithms for. I mean, we hired some incredible applied math and statisticians, and really some of them, they're all really talented, but some of them were not. It was difficult to create algorithms for sports that you don't intuitively understand
yeah.
to the extent that a U.S. sports fan would. And then also putting those algorithms into production infrastructure to enable it to happen in real time was something that required a lot of dedicated focus. So we went a little bit too hard on the data science and not enough initially on sort of the productization of those algorithms. And, I made a lot of the textbook sort of managerial mistakes where, you think you hire more people and you get more productivity, but oftentimes less is more, right? You want to start with a small team, a really small, capable team that knows exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and make some incremental progress, and then more methodically and gradually expand your team. So we made that mistake as well.
Money-wise?
We ultimately figured out how to do it. It's the right mix, and I don't want to disclose too many of our internal processes, but I don't think I'm saying anything that people can't ultimately figure out. You need to find the right mix of data engineers to organize and automate the availability of the data, both historical and real-time data. You need to find still the right data scientists to do a lot of the research behind the machine learning algorithms that ultimately enable the pricing behind these products. And then you need really good software engineers to productize these algorithms. And then that goes into a core pricing engine because the thing with SimpleBet from a technology standpoint that we realized is it's not just the pricing that enables you to go to a consumer and say, you should get paid 5.25x if it's in play on this pitch. It's about automating the market mechanics. So for example, the market creation, suspension, repricing, and resulting is all automated too. And the reason for that is because we don't want to just enable people to bet on like Aaron Judge's at bat while he's on deck or in the hole. We want to enable people to bet on his at bat while he's at the plate, so that when a ball happens and it's a 1-0 count and then a 2-0 count and then a 2-1 count and a 3-1 count, the odds are changing in real time, and they're changing in real time such that the market is suspended for the least amount of time possible. Because if the market is suspended for 5 seconds on a pitch by pitch basis, the consumer has no time to place a bet.
Yeah, you're done. Yeah.
So there's some nuances and intricacies to this consumer experience that were pretty underappreciated by the existing industry experts, because they didn't really understand U.S. sports very well. Like me and growing up here in South Florida, that means what I just described, being able to have a sub 1 second suspension time versus a 5 second suspension time or whatever, that means everything to that consumer experience.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of difficult technology to enable that to exist. So
I can imagine. That's insane, by the way. Is that what BETR is at right now? Sub 1 second?
Well, SimpleBet. SimpleBet is the B2B product and technology.
Okay.
So we went on a little bit of a tangent, but that's just an example, one of hundreds of examples I could probably talk about why it was very clear over time that SimpleBet, building the product and technology to enable micro betting, it needed to be its own separate company. There needed to be an exclusive focus on just building the requisite technical infrastructure to enable this new category of betting to exist. There was also a thought amongst a lot of members of the team that from a business standpoint, the more prudent approach would be to just build the technology and license the API feeds to companies like DraftKings and Caesars and Bet365, who have since become SimpleBet clients, and just get a revenue share.
Yep.
And you have no incremental OpEx, no incremental CapEx on the business, and you just build a really nice business that way. And to some extent, they were very right. It's a nice business for sure. The problem from my standpoint is, if you don't control that end consumer experience, you're really inherently limiting the opportunity for what this product could ultimately become.
Okay.
Right? Because you could build this amazing back-end technology, but if you're still seeing a table, list, grid, spreadsheet-like UI and this uninterpretable minus 175 plus 5.5, 49.50/U, then that's what it looks like.
Almost had a seizure there.
I get a little bit intense about this, but it's just it's crazy to me that we're coming off of fucking 5 years post PASPA and the products look and feel this way.
Yeah. I hear you.
So my thesis is by the end of the decade, it's not going to look and feel the way it is. And there's a lot of data to support what I'm saying, because again, going back to FanDuel and DraftKings advertising like car insurance companies, right? I don't think they have a brand awareness problem in this country, right? I think everybody has probably had the DraftKings and FanDuel advertisements and logos shoved down their throats by now, at least if you're even into
aware.
sport.
Yeah.
I think they're aware.
They're very aware.
Yeah. So, they spend billions of dollars on marketing. And they have 2 to 3.5 million monthly active users, which in real money gambling, that's a lot of users. And they've built really good businesses. FanDuel's already profitable. They did $3 billion in revenue last year. They're going to do more revenue this year. They're on their way to being a $10 billion business. DraftKings is also doing well, right? I think DraftKings is good business. They did over, I think, $2.5 billion in revenue last year. And a lot of people say, well, they're burning so much money. I think their EBITDA was close to negative $500 million or $1 billion or something like that. But they have a path to profitability, and it seems to be working. So they've built good businesses. Mm-hmm. If anything, I think it's more of a testament to how big this opportunity is because, again, 2 to 3.5 million monthly active users, they're in front of 85 million gambling age sports fans right now. Yeah. And at maturity, they're going to be in front of 175 million gambling age sports fans. There's a lot of incremental TAM to capture here.
Yeah, there is.
So I go back to the E-Trade and Robinhood analogy where, before Robinhood came around, I don't know how many people were day trading.
True. Very true.
But then Robinhood came around, and I would be willing to bet that a lot of Robinhood's users are people who've never day traded before because they built a product experience that a normal person could pick up and interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
So, it's a lot. So, and I just want to say I agree with you because I do, and it's not to necessarily shit on anybody or whatever, but a lot of these, like I'll use Bet365 as an example. Their interface still looks like Windows like 95.
It hasn't changed in
years,
years.
which surprises me because they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest. I'm sure you would know that better than I would. Bet365 is like a monster.
Yeah,
and
they're probably doing billions of dollars of EBITDA right now.
So I always wonder like where, like and I had this conversation with just like my buddies, like everyday just gamblers, and they were just like, I don't know why Bet365 looks like it was coded in 95. Like, you know what I mean?
And your thought is if the user experience is just better, then more people will bet.
Well, they're already betting.
It's not even better. Like the user experience should be better.
Okay.
It's just, first off, let's make it interpretable.
Yeah. Like you can even understand
easy
it
to digest.
Yeah.
Our head of gaming, he comes from FanDuel, and he said that their number one customer service inquiry at FanDuel was people asking, what does it mean if I put $5 on a plus 200? Like people, I think you have a problem when consumers are asking about how to use the product.
Yep.
When you're spending that much money in marketing.
100%.
Fair. It's true. Yeah.
So would you say it was more so so it wasn't really all user experience? It's also the spreads and the money lines and how that was organized
for them to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a combination. It's two primary things. One is it's the lack of the interpretability. You need to make it intuitive.
Of course.
I think a good consumer product needs to be something that anybody, at least a sports fan, should be able to pick up and interact with.
Yeah.
The second thing is the engaging nature of the product experience. Okay. For example, you're right. Bet365 kind of looks like a spreadsheet right now.
It does. Yep.
Why does sports betting exist? It should be an entertainment product, right? I think I'm the first and only CEO that has no problem saying publicly to consumers, like, the house always wins.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, over the long run, you will probably lose money betting on sports, right? I don't want to mislead anybody by thinking that you're gonna fucking make money betting on sports, right?
Sure.
Like,
that's refreshing
over
to hear,
over the long run.
You
right?
might be the only CEO ever of all time.
In specific instances, and you have an insight, you could win money,
of course,
sure.
right? But the reason why consumers need to be betting, why I'm passionate about these products existing and why sports betting exists, is because it's to enhance your consumption of sports. It's for entertainment value.
Yeah.
Right. The analogy I like to use is you go to the movies, spend $20 on a movie ticket or $15 or how much it costs these days. You're not getting anything inherent you're not getting any inherent value for that $20 spend. except for 2 hours of entertainment.
Yeah.
Experience.
That is how these product experiences need to be approached and how this category needs to be approached, because like when I go to a Dolphins game, I'm rooting for the Dolphins anyway because it's my hometown team. I want the Dolphins to win all the time. If I have $100 on the game, I'm rooting a little bit harder.
Yep.
True.
That's how you need to approach product from this category. So my point is, when the product looks like a spreadsheet, that's not an engaging entertainment product.
Yeah.
It's a fucking transactional UI layer. It's not that it shouldn't look and feel that way. It should be fun.
Yeah. It's almost.
So you're saying even if they lose, they had some fun doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because it enhanced your consumption of sports.
course,
It
of
shouldn't
course.
it shouldn't look like a fucking spreadsheet.
No,
Now,
I agree.
Yeah. So that
feels very dry.
And then as an entrepreneur this whole time, I guess what's your role looking like when you're with SimpleBet? What are you doing? Are you just team
I'm not
building?
with SimpleBet. I'm the founder of SimpleBet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I'll give you the
Okay,
I'll give you the
break that
context.
down,
So we went down the path of building SimpleBet, and DraftKings signed up for the technology and does a pretty substantial part of their in-play betting business. People don't. So to get back to the point of like, it's going to be sub 1% of handle. The industry experts telling us that back in the day, who just fundamentally did not understand how U.S. sports worked. I think SimpleBet accounted for over like 30% of DraftKings' in-play betting handle for college football last year, for example.
Wow.
And in-play betting is projected to be at least 50 to 70% of the entire market over the long run. So, similar numbers from baseball, a little bit less for NFL, but it's climbing. I think over 25% of DraftKings' in-play Super Bowl betting handle was powered by SimpleBet, for example. So, and the user experience is not where it needs to be yet, and they haven't really marketed the product yet. So it's just what SimpleBet's doing with DraftKings is scratching the surface of what I think it ultimately will be, and it's still putting up real numbers. So it's a nice business. It's a good business. It's a really good business, and it has validated that consumers in this country want to bet on the moments within sporting events. But again, the problem is that consumer experience that I just kind of ranted about. So I couldn't solve the user experience problem within SimpleBet anymore, because if I launched a consumer brand there, we would have been competing against our
I was just gonna
customers.
say that.
DraftKings,
Conflict of interest
Caesars,
right away.
Bet365, like they would tell us to fuck off, right?
Well, I'm sure even at the beginning when you were in talks with them, did they ever ask you, do you have a plan to do a direct-to-consumer app as well?
Not really.
Were they just-
I think there
Okay.
there was. I mean, my partners on the business were really focused on B2B, and people were, when we're selling a B2B client, you tell them you're a B2B business, because you are. That's what we were. That's what we became.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I was kind of there, just like chomping at the bit to do this D2C stuff. So basically, and this gets into sort of how I met Jake and the timing around that, and so around the time that I was thinking through, and I ultimately came to the conclusion that I think the only way to do this was to spin out a new company from SimpleBet and have this as like a separate corporation, separate entity. Around that time is when I met. I was at a dinner in Miami, sitting next to this guy Jeffrey Wu, who runs a firm called Anti-Fund, which is a creator-focused VC fund that he started with Jake Paul. And I was telling him about what I'm working on and how I'm thinking about spitting out direct-to-consumer from SimpleBet. And I think he had just been speaking with Jake about going after sports betting as a category, potentially as more of like a product incubation thing versus as just like a casual investment, because Barstool Sports had been having a fair amount of success taking their audience and converting them to product, and so it made a lot of sense. And Jake has a differentiated demographic, I think, from what Barstool, the older sort of millennial demographic that they have, and I met, and then I started talking to Jake a bunch, and really wanted to get to know him and what he was looking to accomplish, and telling him about what I was working on at SimpleBet and how I thought that we had to go after direct to consumer to some extent, and we ultimately decided to do better together. And that's the origin story of Better. So for at least from my standpoint, from a product standpoint, it really just finishing what I started at SimpleBet. Now we had built the requisite technology to enable moment-to-moment betting to exist, and we had done so in a way where we created a 9-figure valuation B2B business to enable that, and now we're going to go after the consumer opportunity.
It wasn't attached to SimpleBet at all. You removed yourself from SimpleBet?
We spun out a new entity.
Okay.
And the structure was Jake and I would split 75% of the initial cap table, and then SimpleBet would get 25%.
So this still wasn't a conflict?
No, it's not a conflict because SimpleBet has a minority stake.
Okay.
SimpleBet's a minority shareholder.
Okay, makes
But
sense.
using all the same tech, essentially.
Yes, we're a customer of SimpleBet.
Yeah.
So to clarify, like I'm
Yeah.
still one of the larger shareholders of SimpleBet. Have a great relationship with that team. I'm not a fiduciary or involved in the operations of the business anymore, but I'm a customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Which
So
makes
that's
it-
the
You're
relationship.
paying a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about Better now. Exactly. The origin story. You explain how you met Jake, what that kind of looked like. What year is this?
This is in like mid 2021.
Okay.
And I guess at that point, you never worked with a partner like Jake before in your past.
No, I mean Scott Marshall and Chris Bevilacqua are just a little bit different. Mid 50s.
So when I guess the initial conversations, what were you thinking that he could provide or bring to the table? Obviously, his audience is massive, but on a more technical scale, I'd say.
So as you could probably tell, I'm pretty opinionated and have a vision about the product, right? And I think in the long run, we're going to win with product. But the one thing that I couldn't wrap my mind around, and that, if I'm an investor in Better, and I actually do a lot of investing on the side as well. So I started approaching things more as like, a prospective investor would. And the big challenge that I would see Better having to overcome is how are you going to acquire customers? And from my standpoint, you have a great product experience. There's going to be a lot of organic growth because, and that's the best type of customer acquisition. People telling their friends about it. Yep. And referring people to the product experience, but you need some UA strategy still. So with Jake, what was really interesting, the more I spent time with him and learned about what he wanted to accomplish and what he's capable of accomplishing, became apparent to me that we could build like a bona fide media company. Mm-hmm. I think Barstool has done, again, like a ton. They created the playbook, and I have a ton of respect for what they've accomplished. But I think you could create something that is, perhaps culturally relevant in a different way, a little bit more inclusive to a broader mainstream audience, really double and triple down on original and short form content, built predominantly for TikTok, although if TikTok gets banned, for example, it's not a platform specific strategy, but a content strategy, because you see Instagram investing in Reels, YouTube investing in Shorts. Elon's even come out and said that there's going to be a greater emphasis on creator-led original short form content. So if you focus on that, make that the core tenet of your media company, you could build something really dangerous with Jake, because we could scale the media company in a way where gambling from day one is the core source of monetization. Because as you guys know, media is a tough business, man. Yes. It's a tough business, and you can't invest in it. You can't invest in it quickly until you build the audience.
Exactly.
And, have these guys paying you a lot of money. And,
it's a momentum game.
Yeah.
But
if you have, sorry to cut you off, but if you have gambling as the core source of monetization, and you go out and raise venture financing in a manner that the investors understand and expect that the way you're going to monetize in the long run is via gambling, not only can you use the gambling revenue to invest in media, which, by the way, creates a really interesting flywheel because you generate revenue through gambling. You take that revenue and you invest in media, get more talent involved, expand your IP portfolio, which will subsequently enable you to expand your audience and then take that incremental audience and convert them back to gambling product and then generate more revenue through gambling and then use that incremental revenue to generate incremental media audience. You have a very interesting flywheel. You know, you're doing that, but because gambling is the core source of monetization. But because gambling is the core source of monetization, you're able to go out and raise venture financing in a manner where your valuation multiples are informed by you running a gambling business. We're not. I don't want to trade as a media company. I'm building a media company to get truly low to no CAC on the gaming business. Yeah. But you know, we're a regulated real money gambling operation.
So with that, you'd be able to get a higher valuation for the business, in turn get
a higher valuation, raise more money, and then use that money to properly. You know, I think when we launched BETR, it was a pretty big splash because we're building we have a well capitalized media organization from day one.
And it's probably also easier outside of getting a higher multiple and all that stuff. It's probably also easier as an investor to understand, like, oh, you have this gambling business. Like, I'm not investing in TikToks,
your views or your views
TikToks,
or something like that, which is hard. Yeah, like you said, it's hard. It's a hard business.
The media company is a means to an end, right? It's to inform the gambling business and to enable truly low to no CAC. On the gambling business. That's basically where BETR is today. We have three things that we're looking to prove. So one is, low to no CAC on the gambling side. So for example, just in Ohio, just in the first, call it, I think we've been live there for 3.5 months now. We estimate to have converted over 20% of our media audience that's in Ohio already to real money gambling depositing users, which is best in class conversion. And we don't know that number for sure, just to clarify, because TikTok and Instagram don't tell you the percentage of people you have in Ohio. So basically what we did was you go to @BETR across all platforms, and we assumed 50% of those accounts were duplicates and then applied a 3.5% number to that because that's the proportion of Ohio's population size. To the
total.
Correct. Yeah. So we're getting low to no CAC. The CAC on that is $45 because we have a $50 sign-up bonus, and then you apply a 10% margin to that. Cool. So from a unit economic standpoint, even if our LTV is less than 50% of FanDuel and DraftKings, we're still going to have by far the best unit economics in the category because their LTV is their CAC is anywhere from $300 to $1,000 or more, for example. So it's an order of magnitude lower CAC. The second thing we're looking to prove right now is strong user engagement and retention. The engagement's been super strong. The retention is getting there. It's not quite where we want it to be or need it to be yet, but it's getting there. And again, this is all with a V0 product. That's the one thing that I really want to emphasize, where we know that our product is nowhere near where we want it to be or need it to be, but at least it gets the core tenets of the vision out there, which is the simple, intuitive UI, UX, and the focus on instant gratification betting. And we're improving our product experience along the way and have, some exciting announcements from a product standpoint that, we consider what's out there right now V0. V1 BETR is going to be coming soon. And then the third thing that we're looking to prove out is this community-driven vitality that, we could turn on the brand awareness engine when we want to, but we want our community to be highly engaged, and ultimately that will enable us to have more influence with our audience and have a better percentage of converting media audience over to product. And that's what we've seen so far with, the Ohio 20% number that I alluded to, for example. If we do those three things, I think, as I alluded to, we're going to have the best unit economics in this category. And that should, we want to validate that within the next 18 to 24 months or so. And then I want to go out and raise a few $100 million and really pour gasoline on this fire. That's generally the approach.
You're saying, when you say pour gasoline, you're saying from a, Yeah, you know, all good. You're saying from a
We're trying to figure out the venting in this room. It's
all good.
You'll see this entire warehouse is like still very much being built.
We're gonna do it before and after.
Yeah,
but
it's
when you say
yeah.
pour gasoline, you're saying from a brand awareness standpoint that you guys are really gonna just like take it to the next level, brand awareness wise. Like we might see some Super Bowl ads or what?
Not anytime soon, man.
is it
I
like
don't know if we
yeah.
ever will do that, to be honest. I mean, the whole point of what we're doing here
Use
is
your
to
own
like
channels.
not need to do that.
Yeah, the organic.
So what's the play right now? I guess I saw you sign the podcast as well, the Cavender twins, right? So is it?
It's not just a podcast, by the way, and the Cavender twins are a great example.
So
of
elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, so what there's a truly win-win proposition that we're able to offer to creators. So you have all this emerging talent,
Okay.
and you know, we're not. So you have Jake and you have Better Media. So Jake Paul and Better Media have, as you know, rapidly growing audiences right now. So we could go to talent and say, not only will we write you a check, and you know, we can't write as big of a check as like a FanDuel or DraftKings, but we'll still write you a check. We have money. Write you a check. Even better than that, we'll give you equity in the business.
which I saw that, which
So-
super
so-
interesting.
So all the creators that we have and all the employees here, we all participate in the upside. We're all partners in this thing. So we could offer you cash and we could offer you equity. But because of the rapidly growing audiences of Jake Paul and Better Media and everything else we're doing, we could also amplify you to even more people. We could make you even more famous than you already are. So in addition to that, we also have set up a media organization where, you know, everything we do from a content creation standpoint is very deliberate and methodical. We have, you know, experts in content development, in production, in media sales sponsorship. And, you know, we're going to approach this as partners and try to make you not just more famous than you already are, but an even stronger content creator and influencer than you already are. And we're able to do that, a lot of it because we're monetizing the business and raising capital against a gambling
On the other
thesis.
side, yeah.
And the equity that you get, by the way, as a creator joining Better Media is not just in Better Media. You're getting equity in Better Holdings, which owns both Better Media and Better Gaming. So we've tried to create sort of this, you know, it's kind of like it's truly a win-win, no-brainer type of partnership for emerging talent and content creators. And what I'll also add to this, though, and you'll notice that it's not like we have dozens and dozens of creators, right? We have, obviously Jake is the godfather of this talent network we're creating, and you know, and I say this a lot, we're gonna fail as a business if we're just synonymous with being the Jake Paul Sportsbook or media company. We want the next 100 generational content creators to come through Better Media. So we have Jake, now we have the Cavender twins, Bo Nickel, who is one of the best UFC prospects in recent memory, $1 million Marco Piemonte.
Yeah, legend.
He's
Legend.
Derek Sullivan, who we hired as a video editor, is I just remember like being in our original office, and I just walked by and we hired this, you know, scrawny kid from Rhode Island to edit videos, and I just hear him fucking talking about how he's gonna like punch Cooper Kupp in the face and like talking all this shit. I'm like, what the fuck's going on over here? Like this, but like he's hilarious,
Yeah.
right? So he's emerging talent, and
Yeah.
you know, we also have this model where, you know, we're you know, incubating talent internally from just even the employees who work at the company, right? And it's working very nicely. So my point is, it's not like we have dozens of creators, and the reason for that is you know, one is as a startup, you know, even though we've raised a bit for an early stage company, you know, it's as Chris likes to say, in terms of the capital. I mean, in this industry, it's like it's a pimple on an elephant's ass in this industry. It's fucking nothing. $50 million is nothing in this industry. I think just in Ohio, just in January, FanDuel and DraftKings spent 3 times our entire equity financing just on promo bonuses in Ohio, not even the paid UA. That's what we're going up against. This is a series of David versus Goliath matchups. So my point is, we do got to be very methodical with our resources, right? We gotta be very frugal, right? So there's that consideration. But I think the more important consideration with respect to this particular point is that we want emerging talent and content creators that really buy into what we're doing and are open to becoming even better than they are right now. That will work with Jake Strasser, who heads up original content. That will work with Mike Denevi, who runs our media team. We want people that are open to becoming and have a strong desire to become even better than what they currently are doing. Because and a lot of these emerging creators, there's no limit to what they could do. I mean, they're just scratching the surface of what they're going to accomplish and their potential. And I don't think there's a better example and culmination of all of these factors and characteristics than the Cavender twins, for example, and then some of the other, $1 Million Marco, Bo Nickel, Derek Sullivan. So we're excited about it, man.
I think the equity play is huge because they get to grow with the company, right? You raised $50 million as well.
There's nothing like owning equity, man.
Yeah, of course. They want skin in the game. They want to see. They want to see what. Yeah,
even as a creator, no, I just want to touch point. I don't know if there's any company that's going to give you that. To be honest, forget the whole gambling thing.
Definitely not the ones who have been in the game for a while and they don't need to do that.
And I'm curious now. Just me being completely curious. Like, are you guys only looking now from the media side to, I guess, bring talent under your wing, or do you think in the future it would be something like, okay, that's a cool show, that's a cool whatever, like we'll sponsor that as like a better sponsor?
Great question. So I brought up the low to no CAC.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an investor, your first question on that should be, well, it's not truly low to no CAC, right? Because you're investing in the talent contracts, in the personnel on the media side. You're investing millions of dollars to build a media company, even if you're doing it more frugally than the others.
Sure.
But if you get sponsors to sponsor your content and you get sponsors that are complementary and even in some cases value accretive to your brand, then the media company is generating revenue and will ultimately generate cash to the bottom line. So our low to no CAC engine, it's truly low to no CAC, and it's actually going to contribute to EBITDA over the long run.
Yeah.
So that's the way we're trying to set it up. So, for example, we were thrilled to share that, and I'm sharing this. You could see it in some of our content, but we closed a deal a couple weeks ago officially with Celsius Energy Drink.
Huge.
To be a flagship partner of Better Media from a brand sponsorship standpoint. We're finalizing some other deals as well, and we're well on track to beat our media revenue forecast right now.
Sick.
So that's pretty much you guys using your channels to obtain sponsorship. But would you ever go out there and sponsor other things as well outside of the company?
Maybe. I don't want to say never.
But that's not
anything,
the point of you building all these channels.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I say maybe because maybe there's something super opportunistic where we get a really good deal because in addition to getting the sponsorship, we also get to amplify and enhance what they're doing and therefore get a way better rate than like a FanDuel or DraftKings would.
Okay.
Which we're already seeing. I mean, a lot of IP really wants to partner with Better for sort of the quid pro quo of, Better's capable of paying a little bit of money. Maybe even let's have Better involved for free, but let's let Better amplify our IP.
Yeah.
Because they have a real audience and they have real creators and they have a differentiated demographic that they're going after.
So I want to now apply that to, I want to apply all that to the Cavender twins. How did that deal come to be?
I think we've been following them for a while. I was actually talking to Marco. I was talking to Marco the other day, and he sent me a screenshot of, I think he sent a DM to Mike Denevi, who runs our media company, forwarding some Cavender twins content, and was like, we got to sign these twins. So he may have been the first, actually. Okay. I think Marco gets credit for this one. But we started following along their content, and we thought that they would be a great fit. And, they got in touch with their agent, and, their agent, Jeff was great to work with. And, he and the Cavender twin, Haley and Hannah, really bought into what we're doing here.
Enough to leave the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is huge. Yeah, that's just a kudos to you guys.
Never mind basketball. So you guys raised $50 million, right? Correct?
Yeah,
50 million.
a little bit more than that.
You said
but
it's
yeah.
a pimple on the elephant's ass. That's what you said.
I'm adopting all these like 50-year-old sayings, having worked
These
with these
grandpa
guys.
phrases
So
or what?
I'm 27.
Yeah.
I actually turned 28 in
Were you 95?
95, April 23rd. So I think that's in like 2 days. I turned 28. I'm fucking getting old, man.
Yeah.
I'm
93. Stop this now.
But no, I kind of sometimes I'll talk like an old dude just because I've worked.
That's
or
who you're around, though, right? So in terms of raising 50 million, I think a lot of our audience and myself would want to know what goes into that. And I mean, this is not your first rodeo in raising capital, right? So maybe talk about what went into raising that 50 million, because I've seen a list of some of your investors, super impressive.
Thank you.
And maybe what you've learned from the past that you applied now when you go out and raise funds.
Sure. I mean, I think at the earliest stages, you really have two buckets of and there's always going to be a narrative-driven component to the capital raise. But when we were starting Better from scratch, it had to be narrative-driven, right? Like we were starting from scratch. So I think the key advantage that I had, there were a few advantages that I'll get into, but the key advantage I had was that I had, as you may be able to tell, I have a pretty profound clarity of what I'm trying to do here, right? I have a very specific vision. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I've admitted to and learned from those mistakes. I think a big part of being a successful entrepreneur is, I was reflecting on the 5-year anniversary of SimpleBet actually, and because that technically happened a few weeks ago.
Congrats.
And thank you. It's been a fucking journey, man. But it really comes down to being smart enough to identify opportunities before they become obvious to others, humble enough to be able to admit to and learn from mistakes, and determined enough to never give up. In that order of least important to most important. That last factor can't be overstated. It's all about sheer will at the end of the day if you have the requisite intangibles to be successful, in my opinion. So through all of this, despite being, I think one of my advantages is I'm 27, about to be 28, but I've been doing this in this particular industry, trying to solve, I gave you a little bit of the DraftPod context, kind of trying to solve the same exact problem for almost a fucking decade. And I've made so many fucking mistakes along the way, and I've learned from them, and I've learned about this industry and how to methodically sequence execution. And so when I sent out the original memo to raise the round, a lot of the investors, commented on just how clear the perspective and the vision was. So I think that's really important. I think having a clear vision and strategy is really important to being successful and being able, in general, not just raising money, but in general. The other thing was that because I had done this a few times already and have created some shareholder value along the way, many of the better investors, I don't know if it's most of them, but many of them, this is their third time investing with me. Wow. Their third or fourth time. In Scott Marshall's case, is the fifth time because he invested in the project that became SimpleBet. But I do a lot of venture investing on the side. I love supporting other entrepreneurs, and 305 Ventures is something that I started on the side as a founder-led, founder-focused fund that writes small checks to entrepreneurs at the pre-seed, seed, and sometimes opportunistically at the A stage. And a lot of these investors, some of them invested in DraftPod, many of them invested in SimpleBet, some of them invested in 305, and we've had success together. So there's these are relationships that I've had for years, and they all see how I operate. And so I think those are the two core things to just wrap it up there on that particular point is clarity of vision and approach, and just me sort of having credibility in this industry with this group of investors.
Would you say your age? I know you kind of mentioned it. Like, do you think your age?
Right. I meant to. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I meant to bring up that point where it's a unique situation where I've been doing this for a decade, but because of my age, I have empathy with these consumers.
Yeah.
I'm not some fucking 65-year-old dude who's wondering to himself what a 24-year-old sports fan is interested in.
True.
Like, you see a lot of that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the executives in this industry. I don't mean to put anybody on blast, but just look at them.
Yeah.
Look at their age. Look at how they like what they were focused on before what they're doing. I mean, I'm a huge believer in founder-led companies for this reason. I mean, DraftKings, to their credit, like Jason fucking through sheer will figured out, he powered through the regulatory stuff that was happening in 16, 17, 18, and through, sheer will, got DraftKings. I think their stock hit a high the other day. They're back to about $10 billion market cap. I think he's one of the few, if not the only other founder-led business in this category right now.
So would you ultimately say your age was seen as a positive or a negative?
I think it was seen as a positive because of the empathy with the consumer and the fact that I'd done this before. Okay. If I had the empathy with the consumer, but I hadn't done it before, then I think it would be a mixed bag.
Okay. Fair.
And then I'm looking at some of these investors here: Travis Scott, Des Bryant, Dave Grutman. Are these strategic investors? Do they have any role to play when it comes to BETR, or are you just trying to get some finances and get the dream going?
Yeah, no, they're totally strategic investors.
Yeah. And what kind of role would people like this play for you guys?
I mean, I think so. Candidly, initially, when the fact that you even are mentioning that in a sort of public discussion,
that's online.
That's online. No, I'm saying the fact that it's out public, the fact that we're talking about that, the fact that the fact that when you Google BETR and see those are the investors, these are leaders in consumer, and they have put their stamp of approval on BETR and on me and Jake.
Yes.
So that has value.
That's more than enough.
It is more than enough, but the ability to go to them when we think there's an opportunity that makes sense for both them and for us. Yeah, it's a relationship.
True.
Yeah.
These are, if you're building a consumer company, that is, on the media side, part of our strategy. One way I like to describe it, because a lot of these media companies, they, if you look at Bleacher Report and Action Network accounts, they do a lot of reposting of viral memes and stuff. We're not in the business of reposting culture. We're all original content. We're creating culture. So having people like that around the table really gives you an advantage as a consumer business.
Of course.
What's it like working with Dave Grutman?
Yeah, Dave's
We're
great.
Big fans of him. He's been on the show before.
Cool.
Too.
Yeah, I saw that when I looked at the account. I think he was talking about poppy steak and the origins of that. But nuts. No, he's great. I mean, he's one of the most well-connected, respected people, not just in Miami, but in hospitality industry globally in general. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
To go back to sort of my, to the first thing I mentioned in terms of the three things that I think really define what's required to be successful. He was smart enough to identify a lot of opportunities before others. Yeah. And he's reaping the benefits of that now.
Good guy to have on your side.
For sure.
100%. 100%.
I guess anyone who's listening right now and they want to get started, let's say in tech in general, or as an entrepreneur in general, and eventually raise capital and start their own businesses and maybe sell them, plan an exit, what advice would you give them based on what you've learned, let's say, in the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this shit for a long time.
The more advice, the better. Yeah, you need some more waters? Or what?
I drink a lot of water, man. I get so actually as related to this, I in our last board meeting, I think they put an over/under to use a sports betting term on how many waters I would drink, and they put 8 because it's a 2.5 hour meeting. Yeah. So they put 8, and I ended at 9, man. I drink a lot of water, but I don't know what it just fucking fuels my brain, man.
Yeah, it keeps you rolling. That's what you need.
To answer part of your question, just drink a lot of fucking water. I mean, honestly, a lot of what I started becoming more successful when I took care of myself.
Yeah.
So I sleep 8 to 10 hours every fucking night.
Nice.
Pretty much no exceptions unless there's like something super time sensitive that I got to do super early in the morning.
Yeah.
8 to 10 hours a night. I try to get sun every day. Like, I need to think fucking clearly.
Yeah.
And so I, drink a lot of water, sleep, get sun, and like, it's one of the reasons why I love being in Miami, right? Because you can't do that everywhere.
Yeah.
my mood in New York was like, it was like, just being inside for 7 or 8 months of the year just fucking sucked.
We felt that in Toronto. Trust me, that's why we're here. We were
Yeah.
back in Toronto, locked down.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of new entrepreneurs, I think the most, I sort of gave you my 3 things, and I'm trying to figure out a way to describe this. Like, you're always trying to win, right? At the same time, a big part of winning is, like, Jeff Bezos had a really good quote where stubborn on the vision, but flexible on the details. Nice. You're not going to know all the fucking details along the way. So your ability to quickly identify what's working and what you need to double and triple down on and what's not working, and not being like, I see this mistake a lot in first-time founders where they're too afraid of being able to admit to not just their investors and their employees, but to themselves that a particular strategy or approach is not working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, don't fucking make anything the hill you'll die on, man. You've got this North Star. Like, don't... you got to be humble enough to admit to and learn from mistakes so that you can keep going.
Yeah.
And I, whether it's an ego thing or a fear of failure thing, and whatever the reason was, I struggle with this. I used to struggle with this a lot more.
And what was the reason for you? Was it ego? Was it like you're just attached to things that you've created on your own? Because I know that can be a thing too.
A lot of it's like thinking that like I was like perspective embarrassment over being wrong about something.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that, to be honest.
If you gotta wrap your mind around it, like you're not going to be right about everything, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Learn from it.
100%.
The quicker you learn that, 1, you were not right about that thing, and 2, what the right thing may be, the faster you're able to do that in real time on a daily basis. I think the more likely you'll be successful. And you see this a lot. You see this skill a lot more in second, third, fourth, fifth time founders, because they unfortunately most times you got to learn things the hard way. Yeah. And I'm certainly in that category.
Do you is there anybody specifically, any mentors that you have along the way, have had or still have, and kind of talk to? I don't want
to give a nice shout out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people, man. I mean, first I'll mention Scott Marshall, who is the one guy who invested in literally everything that I did, and he's seen a lot of shit too. And he's just been a great mentor of mine and supporter of mine, and got to give him the shout out. Chris Bevilacqua, my other co-founder at SimpleBet, without his leadership and his belief in myself and the vision and the determination to just ensure that thing would not fail when there were a lot of moments it looked like it was going to fail, and a lot of those moments were due to my mistakes. I got to give him a shout out. Of some really great investors like Saxon Baum from Florida Funders is fantastic. Jeffrey Wu, who runs Anti-Fund with Jake, is fantastic. Jeff Ransdell, Fuel Venture Capital, has been super supportive of what we're doing and a believer from the moment we met each other. Roger Ehrenberg from IA Sports is one of the best investors I've ever worked with, just from a tactical, strategic standpoint, and he's been giving me license to really do more of what I do, and in a really from like an intellectual, tactical standpoint. So if you have an opportunity to work with him as an entrepreneur, I would jump on that in 2 seconds and try to raise money from him. Leah Capital Partners has been super, Ross Keston, Ari Keston, Max over there, really supportive of what we've been doing from day one. Nikisa Badarian, who runs Most Valuable Promotions with Jake and is on the board of BETR, is been a really good partner to us, and have a great team here. Alex Ursa, our head of gaming, Mike Denevi, our head of media, Ashwin Krishnan works. This guy's a fucking machine, head of legal. Adrian Figueroa, who I actually grew up with down here in South Florida. I've been trying to hire for 5 years, is finally made the leap and joined, and he's our head of finance, and he's fantastic. And I think the last one, and I'm missing a lot of people, obviously,
Sure.
but the last one is Jake Paul, who really believed in myself and the vision, and he could be doing a million other things, as we all know, and I don't take the commitment to what we're doing lightly. So I'll end there.
What a list.
We have a famous question, but before that, I want to ask one question. You mentioned very early on about keeping the team small and building strategically, methodically when it made sense. Currently, between I guess both ends of the business, how many people are part of BETR at this point?
Right now, it's about I think 35-ish full time.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep this thing below
Lean and mean.
100 as long as possible.
Yeah.
Give me. I'm also a really big believer in person over remote. I think that changes everything.
Agreed.
Everything. It's night and day. Give me 50 killers in Miami who are committed to what we're doing over 200 sort of even above average people working remotely, and give me that former scenario all day.
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place for it 100%. Dude, I know you probably have a million fucking things to do, so we're going to ask you the famous question. We are the MBH podcast, Money Buys Happiness. Do you, Joey, believe money buys happiness? And take that sip before you answer that question.
Yeah, no, I anticipated the need to take that sip before answering this question. I think it buys freedom and flexibility, which subsequently enables you to be happy when you feel relaxed, when you don't got to worry about money, when you're able to support your family and friends in certain situations where they may need your support. So it's I don't think it should be the means, but it's certainly a means to that end, 100%. Anybody who tries to tell you differently is I don't want to say full of shit, but it's easy to say it doesn't buy you happiness when you have money, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who have money who are not happy, and there's a variety of reasons associated with that. But I think, I don't know. I think it enables you to go down a path where it's more likely that you'll be happy.
Yeah. Freedom, just the freedom alone and no stress. 100%. That was really technical.
Man.
Yeah. Listen.
Dope conversation.
Yeah, seriously, appreciate your time, man. Appreciate you inviting us to the space. It's been unbelievable. I think I felt like I was at a fucking, I was at a lecture right now, just listening in. No, it was good. Seriously, so much value. And of course, guys, if you made it this far, and I know you did, hit the subscribe button, like the video, let us know what you thought of the episode. We're gonna leave all of Joey's socials down there, all the BETR stuff, give you guys all the links to that, so you can go follow along. And once again, thank you so much, bro. Really appreciate it. Dean,